Well, hi, this is Ryan Paulson, and we're doing our video here on Exodus 33, 7 through 17. And this is just a great text about Moses' unique interaction with God as he led the people of Israel. And one of the things that, as you're studying the scriptures for yourself, you want to look for are repeated words or phrases or ideas. And so there's a great example of that in this text, and I want to show it to you. And this is something you can easily practice for yourself, looking for repeated words, phrases, or ideas. Here's what it says. Now Moses used to take a tent and pitch it outside the camp, some distance away, calling it the tent of meeting. Anyone inquiring of the Lord would go to the tent of meeting outside the camp. And whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people rose and stood at the entrance to their tents, watching Moses until he entered the tent. As Moses went into the tent, the pillar of cloud would come down and stay at the entrance while the Lord spoke with Moses. And whenever the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance to the tent, they all stood and worshipped, each at the entrance to their tent. And the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. And then Moses would return to the camp, but his young aide Joshua, son of Nun, did not leave the tent. Now, in the very first verse here, we see three references to the place that the tent is at. It's outside the camp. It's some distance away. It's outside the camp, we're told again. And then in the next verse, verse 8, it says Moses went out to the tent. Now, it seems like the author's making a big idea here that you have the city, or the tent city, as it were, and then you have some distance, and you have the tent. And that this tent was the place where God's unique presence would come down and meet with Moses. But that didn't happen inside of the camp because the camp is noisy. And the camp has a lot of people. And the camp has a lot of things going on. And in order to meet with God, Moses had to go where? Well, outside the camp, out to the tent. There was a distance away, right? And this is before, now think of our world compared to Moses' world. We have electricity. We have cell phones, or any phones for that matter. We have like widespread travel that makes our lives busy. We have jobs that take us all over the place. And before any of that was there, Moses had to go outside of the camp in order to interact with God. Now, there's this really interesting thing that goes on here in this passage. We see that the people, they all stand up and they worship, and they see this pillar, but they're sort of observers. That this was a unique thing for Moses. Moses would speak to the Lord face to face. And so you have in the Old Testament, you have this progression that what begins in a tent that we're reading about here is eventually turned into a tabernacle. And that's the sort of a bigger version and a more complete version of this. The tent is sort of the 1.0, the beta version, and then it's the tabernacle, and that serves them for a number of years. And then you have the temple, which is the permanent structure built by Solomon. And in each of these places, you have this unique presence of God that's coming down and meeting with the people. That happens in a place, in a unique place. But if you start reading the New Testament, there's this fascinating thing that happens. We see in John chapter 1, verse 14, that Jesus comes and quote, tabernacles among us. that Jesus is this tent of God that comes down, and he's the presence of God among us. And then we see that we become the temples. In 1 Corinthians 3:16, we see Paul writing that you and I are now the temple of God, and the Holy Spirit dwells where? In you and in me. This presence of God, the unique personal presence. Now, the presence of God is everywhere. And yet, there's some determination. There's a decision. There's a pursuit that's needed in order to interact with him, just like there was for Moses. Now, though, the pursuit isn't to go to a certain place like it was in the tent or the tabernacle in the temple. Now the pursuit is a certain posture. It's a posture of being aware of God's presence, of longing for God's presence, of, like David says, I seek you earnestly, I thirst for you, my body faints for you. That's Psalm 63. And so, we live in this world with electricity, cell phones, travel, and jobs. And our world is noisy, and our world is busy. And so our posture now is to create space in our world where we can get outside of the camp. Sometimes physically, but sometimes it's just creating space in our day to read through. Maybe it's read through the daily office, or to spend time in with the Lord in the morning that sort of starts to shape our day and carry over. Maybe it's just going to sit at a park and just take in all the sights and sounds around us, or maybe it's getting on the floor and playing with your kids. I mean, these can all be postures of saying, God, I want to see the world the way that you see it. I want to see you in your world. It takes determination. It takes a decision. Jesus commands us, abide in me. John chapter 15, verse 4. Abide in me, and I will abide in you. Literally, you could translate it, make your home in me, and I will make my home in you. And that typically happens where? Outside the camp. All right, friends, so the idea here is looking for repeated words. This happens outside of the camp, and this is the progression. The tent turns into the tabernacle, turns into the temple, and eventually turns into you. You are the temple. You are the place where God's Spirit dwells. What was unique for Moses is now available to all, through the person and work of Jesus and through the indwelling power of the Spirit. All right, friends, I hope that encourages you this morning. And I pray that as you study the scriptures, Jesus reveals himself to you, because any Christian formation happens as we encounter Jesus. So have a great day.